Hey everybody, welcome to the Relax and Enjoy Health podcast. I'm Andrew French and I'm your optimal health, well-being and balance coach. This is episode number 7 where I talk to Faye Casement. Today with Faye we're going to be talking about ditching the diet and having more joy, because life is too short to live on restrictive diets and beating yourself up daily. Let's get into the interview.
Fine. See, now you're massive.
Oh yeah, I thought it would at least be side by side or something. Nobody needs to see my.
No, it's honestly, this is about you, Faye Casement. Thank you very much for coming on tonight. I'm sorry about the time delay.
No worries.
All right, so basically, you're here talking all things life, weight loss, mindfulness, menopause, all sorts of things. You know, women suffering through weight loss, and it just doesn't have to be that way. Please tell me who you are and what you do.
So thank you, Andrew. I am Faye Casement. I am a life and weight loss coach. I help women ultimately to break away from restrictive dieting. That is my plan and aim, and I help them to look at how life and weight loss and everything between really goes together. So most traditional diets, they will focus on what people eat, how they move. Whereas although we do look at that, it is just one part of it. You know, we are whole human beings at the end of the day, and there's so much that goes into it. And that's what I help my clients draw out, basically.
All right, fantastic. Now it says here you've lost 70 pounds without restrictive dieting.
Yeah,
and
I do.
And you do. I mean, that's basically a Backstreet Boy. So, I mean, over how long a period of time was this? How long ago was this? And
so I hit my goal weight at the start of the year, and I had been doing it for about 2.5 years. I didn't want to go all in. I mean, I've yo-yo dieted for years, absolute years, 20 plus years of yo-yo dieting I'd done, you know, where I'd gone hell for leather at something for a couple of months, burnt out, quit, and then put it all back on again plus some. And so this time was going to be different. The system that the person that I came across and I followed for my weight loss journey, was a completely different kettle of fish. I got introduced to effectively intuitive eating, mindfulness, self-development work, all of these juicy things that I'd never heard of before. And yeah, the whole point was about keeping it easy. And because we can make weight loss very, very hard for ourselves, because we restrict and beat ourselves up when we don't follow whatever plan we're following and that kind of thing. And that wasn't what I was going to do. I was adamant that I was going to do it my way, and that I was going to enjoy the process, and I have. So, and the great thing is that I am now confident that that's not going to come back, because of the way that I have lost it is sustainable for life. It's something that I can very happily do for the rest of my life.
Yeah. So you said intuitive eating. So can you explain to us a little bit, because I've only recently come across this term myself, and you know, as we all look at diets, everything is like something has to give, something has to be taken away, something has to, you know, not be, and actually wanting things is actually bad. You know, because the more we're not allowed to have anything, the greater the desire for it seems to become.
Absolutely, yeah.
So how can we do that?
Zero restriction. Yeah, so true intuitive eating there's 10 principles to it. The first one of which is ditch all diet mentality. So the fact that I can't really call myself a true intuitive eater, because I bend that first rule. But all the other ones I follow, you know. So it's about listening to your body. So the intuitive part of it is really just about getting in touch again with your mind, body and soul. That's how I describe it, rather than sort of going into sort of 10 reasons. And just getting to really know yourself, your patterns, your triggers, how you eat, why you eat, when you eat, who you eat with. You know, all of these things make a difference once you become aware of them. There's then the mindfulness aspect to it, which is about, working on your mindset. So that's where as well the life coaching aspect of what I do comes into it, and learning how to deal with life's ups and downs in a healthier way. And ultimately, this is how, again, the two parts of the jigsaw kind of come together, because if you're, let's face it, most of us probably got to being overweight because something happened where we probably overate, and there was a lot of emotional eating going into it. And so once you learn how to deal with your life and your emotions in a more healthier way, your weight tends to follow because you are looking after yourself that little bit more.
Okay, well, I was just doing I had a webinar yesterday where we talked about, being more self-conscious and of our emotions, and actually loving ourselves along the way, and just enabling ourselves to love the journey rather than the destination, because all we focus on is, I have to get to this weight, or I have to, do this, and it becomes I have to instead of I get to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing we talk about, or I talk about in my membership, about, the fact that we should all over ourselves. We are by nature judgmental creatures, judgmental of a situation, judgmental of ourselves, judgmental of others. And if we allow that judgment to rule the roost, then you end up in a sabotage cycle. And certainly that from a weight loss point of view, a lot of people go at it with a big stick. You're going to beat yourself with a big stick if you have that ice cream, or you have this, that, and the other. Whereas actually, you can have those things and still lose weight. I have practically eaten either chocolate crisps or ice cream or something daily my whole way down, and I will continue to do so and eat the foods that I love. The difference is that I've learned how to eat them in a way that fits my body and my body needs. So rather than sort of going hell for leather at them. And that, again, is because of the fact that I haven't restricted that. I haven't once said to myself, I can't have these things, because, again, as soon as you say you can't, you want it even more. And so, again, you just create cravings and urges, which are ultimately a downfall in a diet scenario.
Right. So basically, with your clients and everything, so their biggest struggles, are they primarily coming to you for weight loss? Are they primarily coming to you for life coaching? Is at a fairly even balance, or what do you find with there?
Yeah, it really is a bit of both. So the intention is to help people with weight loss, but actually I think, like with my journey, I find so much more, and likewise my members find so much more. So, for example, we've actually been working, we've been doing a goal setting challenge the last 5 weeks, where we've been looking to set goals, really get into our whys and what we're doing and why we're doing it, and then looking at what might sabotage us, how we're going to do it, breaking it down, doing some sort of atomic habit work as well, like in the book. And so we've got people working on all sorts of different things. So there's a couple of us who have focused on weight loss for this period. There's some of us working on energy, some of us working on business, because, again, it just all kind of goes in together. And even if you're working on something like business, if you're having a bad day with your business, or you're thinking that things aren't going so well or whatever, chances are you're going to head to the cookie jar, to try and solve it, if that's been a crutch for you in the past, if you see what I mean. So it all interconnects.
Well, I definitely see what you mean. It's almost like, especially with emotional eating, I definitely have a lot of experience with that. We all seem to have a packet of cookies size hole inside us that just seems to be filled up like a little internal hug, and it's definitely finding those emotions.
It is, and again, it's. I laughed a little bit because, again, I was thinking of that. It's like there's lots of stories that we'll have told ourselves over the years and built with ourselves over the years. So I was laughing because I was thinking about the fact that for years I had a pudding stomach. That's why I was thinking about this cookie-sized hole, and there's always space for cookies. And it was always the same with pudding. I could go out for a meal and I'd be my belly would be busting, but there was always room in that pudding stomach for the pudding. And, it was just this saying that I had. And really, I wasn't didn't have a pudding stomach, and I wasn't a cow. I didn't have 3 stomachs, you know. But it's all these kind of little stories and habits that you build, you know. So again, had a bad day, perhaps go and, you know, crack open the beer, crack open the wine. You have things like meal deals, you know. So again, meal deals in the shops and that kind of thing. You know, it's kind of in subliminally programming us to eat
exactly.
sandwich, packet of crisps, and a Coke. Or like when I was a kid growing up and would take a lunchbox to school, it was a sandwich, a packet of crisps, a chocolate bar, and a can of pop, you know, in the 80s. And that you never questioned it. So now when I go to have a sandwich, automatically my brain goes, well, where's the crisps? Where's the chocolate bar? Where's the can of pop? You know? And I didn't even know that I was carrying around these habits. Whereas now I might just have the sandwich, or I might end up, you know, again, who says that a sandwich has to have 2 rounds of bread if you're not hungry for 2 rounds of bread? So it's kind of like these weird things that we end up doing that we never question. But once you start questioning it, that's where you can play about with your quantity and quality of your foods.
Well, I mean, I think we find that comes basically from just our upbringing, basically almost from birth. It's just like, you know, you haven't eaten everything on your plate. You have to eat everything on your plate. There's starving children in Africa. And another good one is I paid good money for that. You know, growing up, you know, money doesn't grow on trees, and it's amazing how the similar concepts go from whether it's, you know, a poverty mindset to a money mindset to the food. And we translate that into when we go out for dinner. You say you go to a normal pub meal and you get a chicken schnitzel. There is a massive serving of chips. There's a massive salad on there. There's a massive chunk of chicken. And you may not be telling yourself that, but you've got that programming running in your mind saying, absolutely, I paid good money for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that again is the kind of things that we will work on through the program, through the methods that I teach my members and one-to-one clients as well, you know, because it's just things that you don't question. It's things that you won't have even thought of. I was also a clock eater. So I was like Pavlov's dog. At 9, 12 and 5, the bell's ringing in my head and I'm salivating for food, even if my body isn't actually hungry. And again, it's just, you were conditioned, I think, from school years. You know, you had to have your breakfast before you went to school. And then, of course, you had your lunch break. And then, you know, and then that carries on through work. And you know, so again, it's surprising where we have picked up all these little traits and habits from, and they're not necessarily wrong, but they are things that can certainly impact into your weight loss. Now, even sort of saying that you need three good meals a day, or, you know, all those kind of sayings. If your body will tell you if it needs food. You know, when we were babies, like I said, from babies, you know, we cried when we were hungry. And we got given the bottle. You know, the body will tell us if we only listen.
Yeah, that's amazing, and it's really such an easy concept. I mean, I think my entire life I've struggled with dieting. I've been a chef for 30 years, so when I get to eat is either before everyone else eats at dinner time. So I'm having dinner at like 3, 4 o'clock at night, but then you get your busy period, you finished at 9 o'clock, cleaning down at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
It's like almost a whole day before, and then all of a sudden you're just like, oh, well, I need another meal. And then, but then you're going to bed at 10:30 or 11 o'clock and, you know, you've got a full stomach and that's not good for you.
Yeah.
And
and then that knocks into how you feel the next day and how you show up for yourself and around food the next day as well.
Exactly, when you have like carbohydrate hangovers in the morning and things like that. So I think my personal biggest success I found with intermittent fasting, where you just stop eating and just not eating. But then one thing I also found is you start squirreling away food like a squirrel when I get to eat in 6 hours time. I'm going to have this food that my family had for dinner because that's amazing. And then all of a sudden, and I actually found myself putting food aside in the fridge as if I'd never have food again.
Yeah.
You know, and so definitely not eating like that.
Yeah, and it does create the you know, at the end of the day, I'm not sort of here to tell anybody what they should or shouldn't do with their bodies. That is up for them. But, but with intuitive eating, then that is something that, you then could end up still eating more calories in your eating window than you would have done if you'd ate them throughout the whole of the day. And so that then you're, again, and what's that doing to your inside and your body? Because your body needs to be regulated at the end of the day. It's just like a car. It's like filling your car up with gas, running it down to empty every time, and then filling it back up again. That last bit of chug at the end is possibly going to do your engine some damage. So wouldn't be one of my first choices. I know people have success with it. But again, for me, it's about the sustainability of that, because one thing that I certainly didn't realize, before I came on this journey and the closer I got to maintenance, because I'd always kind of, again, like you said right at the start, about had that sort of end mindset, like, well, everything's going to be different once I lose my weight, and then I won't have to do this again. And what nobody tells you is that you still have to work on your weight loss when you reach your goal. I think we all think that that's it, it's done, never got to do it again, and that's not true. Actually, maintenance is just as important as the actual weight loss process. So that's why it's so important to pick something you can do for the rest of your life.
Yeah, so sustainability is the biggest thing. But you're talking a lot about mindfulness and actually becoming more intuitive by being mindful. So how would you get people to do that?
Yeah, so I've got various tools. I mean, I've trained as a life coach, so I am a certified professional life coach, so ICF certified life coach. So I've got loads of tools from there. I'm a complete and utter self-development nut as well. So I love all things self-development. And so it's just pulling off tools from there. And then there's some that I've created myself, and just encouraging people to use those tools. Again, before I sort of found these things a few years ago, if somebody said to me mindfulness, I'd have been like, what, meditation and stuff? No, I'm not doing that. That's a waste of time. And although meditation can be part of it, it's so much broader than that. It is about, so like, for example, I have a journaling practice, and I work actively on my thoughts with my thought modeling, and things like rewriting my stories and assessing my days, and sometimes I do some breath work, and sometimes I will do meditation. The point is, I've got this arsenal of tools that I can pick up at any point, depending on what I've got going on in my life. And so I'm just kind of passing on that knowledge to other people, basically, for them to then utilize those things as well.
It's fantastic. So it's primarily women you work with? Or
yes.
You have men as well?
So I'd work with men one-to-one, but my plan was always to have a membership. And so I took the decision that it was going to be a women's only membership, not because I'm trying to keep the men out per se, but it is quite a sensitive topic. And like I say, we kind of cover the whole breadth of topics. So, and because I'm a woman of a certain age, things like menopause come up and that kind of thing. And so it needs to be sort of a container that's that where people can freely say literally whatever it is that they need to. So at the moment it's women only. Yeah.
It is important for people to feel safe. I remember when my wife and we had a massage personal training studio, and literally my client was the 40 to 50-year-old woman. She's basically gone through life. She's had, in this day and age, has to have a full-time job. They've got their range of children at this stage, whether it's 3, 4 children, all going up into the teenage years. And one thing I found was the woman had lost her actual personal identity. She was just the mother. She was just the wife. She was just the friend. And her day was relentless because she'd have to work she'd have to get up in the morning, get the children off to school. Chance her husband, who is some kind of business person or tradie, has left the house by 6 o'clock in the morning. And then she's got to get the children ready, get them to school. Then she's got to get herself to work a full day at work, organize the children to get back from school. Then, you have the whole gamut of what happens when you get home, just being raced off your feet, making sure dinner's ready, making sure the children are fed, have the arguments with the kids over, who's going to clean up and put everything away, doing your homework. Meanwhile, husband's come home, he's exhausted, he's come home an hour or two even after they've gotten home, and so he's just gone straight to the television, and then she's fought the children all the way through into the bedtime and getting there. By the time she gets her butt onto the couch, the man he's ready to go to bed because he's fallen asleep watching whatever his shows were. She's lucky if she gets the remote control. It's like, here, watch your show. And it's not that it's her show, it's her only time slot that she can actually have to herself. I mean, there is no time in there for yourself. There is no time in there, and I found that they lost their complete sense of personal identity. And all of a sudden, they started missing who they were, or they started missing the fact that people used to look at her, or the fact that people would hold doors open for her, and all those problems. And as a personal trainer, my only solution was, hey, let's train, and and things like that. And even though that gave them a certain sense of freedom, because all of a sudden it gave them more energy, it gave them more abilities physically to be able to do the things with their family, and and so that were really the only tools I had for them back then.
Yeah.
But there were days when, they'd come to the gym, you just take one look at them and you just say, okay, Jesse, how about we just turn the lights off today? Turn the lights off, we're going for a walk. And literally we would walk out. And I found they would just go, burr.
Yeah.
Because you were the one person that they got to see 2 or 3 times a week. And it was their half hour for them selfishly, that they could do what they wanted to do purely for themselves and not for any other goals whatsoever. And I guess you're right. They had that environment where they could feel trusted, and or they felt they had that trust, and they had that knowledge that it's not going to get back, because you have nothing to do with their family, you have nothing to do with their friendship circle, and it was a safe place for them. So I can understand how that's very important.
Yeah. And it's key what you say there as well with regards to, women losing their identity. I think that does happen a lot. And again, I resonate with that wholeheartedly. As I say, really effectively, I got into this because I was kind of having a mini midlife crisis. And literally it was my 40th birthday. I went, I've never listened to a podcast, believe it or not. I got to 40 and I hadn't listened to a podcast. And I just popped one on, and it was a weight loss one. And I was like, oh, well, I could do with losing some weight, But my eyes were literally opened that day, from that day onwards, because I was that person. I'm a divorced single mum to a teen. I'd got to 40. I'd completely lost all my self-esteem, all my confidence. I've got a career. I'm an HR consultant by day. I'd got a good career, but yet I just always felt like I was just on this treadmill or a escalator, and it was just continually going up and up and up and up, and like I say, your stress levels were going up and up and up. As I was dealing with all these things, all the bills, worrying about my daughter, my work, my weight, and all those kind of things, just going up and up and up. And then every so often I'd just go and I'd fall off the end, and I'd have a bit of a breakdown almost, but I had to keep going, because again, there was nobody other than me. So I just had to keep going and keep going. And I think a lot of people are like that, where they feel like I felt very trapped. I felt trapped in my own life. And I have exactly the same life now, but that escalator is gone. I don't have that anymore. It's now like this. And that is huge. That is just huge. The fact that I don't ever have that kind of build up and everything like that, because again, I'm kind of dissipating it along the way with the mindfulness and the self-coaching that I do, and the resources that I've got. And it doesn't take a lot per day. It wasn't like I've poured over these things I wasn't pouring over them for hours a day. It literally can be 5 minutes. You can do mindfulness on the loo for 5 minutes if your kids allow you to. You grab your moments when you can.
Rather than sitting there TikToking, everyone just moving on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. We'll all say we don't have time, do we? But again, would you change your life for if it meant giving up one show on Netflix per evening? Hopefully most people would say yes.
Well, that's exactly right. I talked to someone a couple of days ago who said what they found was, they preferred a nice fluid life, but what they found was when they didn't make any plans for life, then life just sort of forgot them and left them on the wayside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So basically, you were so busy and everything, and you said, you got to your 40s and you listened to this podcast, and that was the real aha moment for you. What came to mind? What happened?
I just said, I never knew that these things existed. I half feel a little bit embarrassed to say, really. As I said, heard of mindfulness, you heard of meditation. I don't think I'd ever heard of intuitive eating, and not that she actually called it that. It's really only since I've sort of done my own research on things that I've realised the parallels to it all. But, it was, I just didn't know that it existed. It was just a complete light bulb moment for me. Huge shift.
Fantastic. So, all right. So after that aha moment, was it just a steady state of learning after that to be able to get to this point now?
Yeah, for sure. Again, it was just, it's almost like it's crept up on me in a way, really. I just, all of a sudden I'd probably say it took me maybe about 3 months or so just to kind of get into that initial groove. And then from there, I've just kind of, like say, done just little bits a day to work on myself here, there and everywhere. Again, it was just coming from that process and just from showing up for myself daily, just in small little ways. That's when that momentum grew. And it became easier and easier from there. Don't get me wrong, I still have days where obviously it's not so easy. And, there's days where, my mind's my mood's in the toilet kind of thing. But I come out of it a lot quicker than I know that I would have done in the past because of these tools. And I can just kind of pick myself up and get going again with ease. That makes a huge difference.
Yes. So what major things in your life had to change? Because, you don't change overnight. So what were the biggest things you had to actually let go of?
Judgment is the biggest thing. And it's still there. It still comes back on a daily basis. But the biggest thing that I would like anybody to take away is to work on acceptance. Self-acceptance, acceptance of a situation and acceptance of others, because that is what will release the suffering part that goes with that, really. And so a big part of my program again is about compassion and kindness, treating yourself with compassion and kindness. But actually, if you apply that to, like say, a situation or others, it just makes life so much more easier. So again, this is why I want people this is how people find the joy part, because when they work on it and work on that self-love and compassion, it changes everything.
All right. So just being a normal person like everyone else, does anything, everyone can do this. It's not just you. It's not the fact that, you're special. It's just everyone can do this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think that is the beauty of this, and hopefully what comes out from me, when I'm putting myself out there in the world, is that I am just a normal person. And so actually one of the things that one of the regular posts that I put out, for example, on social media is a story every Friday about a woman called Jane. Because obviously everybody knows a Jane, if you know what I mean. And, because Jane is just a normal, is just a normal woman. And that's all that I am. It's all that any of my members are. I'm never going to be somebody who is your stereotypical, I'm not going to be a model. I'm probably never going to own a 6-pack or anything like that. I'm just helping people to optimize themselves if they want to, because actually I'm a big believer in like health at every size. So it's not even about the weight loss per se. It's just about if people do want to occupy a smaller body, I want them to do it in a way that treats them physically and mentally well, rather than getting them stuck in the usual diet cycle of binging and restricting.
Have you had to change much, I mean, as a person compared to, Faye, the HR consultant that, would be running around, work with the teenager and everything. Now it's the coaching side of things. You've totally moved into that area. That's
no,
you now.
I'm still working, and I still got my daughter, and I'm doing this on top. So it's if anything, I've kind of doubled what I was, but there is just nowhere on this earth I would have had capacity to do that a few years ago. But I do it because I love it. I love talking about this. I love helping people. I want people to have the same transformation and to feel, I feel unstoppable nowadays, and this for me is huge. And I want everybody to kind of feel this same personal power that I do. But like I say, it was a very different story. And I think my life would have been very different. It would have been a different trajectory had I not found this work. My daughter, the relationship with my daughter's amazing. It's like living with my best friend. Whereas I reckon that had I not done this work, we would have been at loggerheads, and I would have been shoulding all over her about the fact that she should be emptying dishwashers and doing all this and, fighting, just like you were talking about earlier. I've had promotions at work. This comes out and helps me when I'm talking to my clients. So just helps in every single area of your life.
It's fantastic. All that energy and passion is that, gives you that much more capacity to be able to help others. And the simple fact that everything that you had before that was really filling up your life and holding you back and giving you all those negative emotions and negative connotations. And now, just because you've changed, everything else is the same, but you now have this better ability to deal with everything else, which has given you a greater capacity to be able to deal with everything else. Because I'm listening to everything you have on your plate and everything, and it sounds like a completely different world, but it's the same world.
Exactly,
and everything
it's the same world
at the exact same time.
Yeah, it is exactly the same world. Been in the day job for 14 years. It's just it's just that my capacity has changed. Like I say, in effect, I've expanded. I feel like I can expand time and capacity and just deal with so much more. I mean, it's just even down to like I call myself a recovering perfectionist, for example. So whereas I would have spent hours agonizing over whether I was doing something wrong or that or I was going to get into trouble or this, that and the other, and all that worry, once you let that go, your life is just so much more peaceful. And that's what I've done. I've just used these tools, and I continue to use them to let go of the stuff that I don't need and that doesn't serve me anymore.
So do you find having the inner peace basically helps with all those cravings? Because before, food became that emotional crutch and everything. So
I don't really have food cravings anymore. It was my birthday earlier this week. I was 21 again, obviously, and thank you. And I bought a cake, and I threw half of it away yesterday. So it literally been sat on the side for all week, whereas I'd have ate that cake in one. I'm not going to lie. Somebody might have got a slice if they were lucky. But it was very much, seafood and eat it. Whereas now it's just, it can sit there because it doesn't have the same hold over me anymore. So again, I've got complete food freedom because I've just changed my relationship with it.
That's absolutely amazing. So what would you do? Do you have daily habits you have to do? I mean, you're still working full time. You have your groups and you have coaching and everything like that. Is your day set up, or are you flexible? Do you actually have daily habits and rituals you do?
Yeah, so still quite flexible, because again, I don't want to put pressure on myself. I mean, that doesn't mean that I don't have any drive. It doesn't. And again, I think would be a misconception there about acceptance, meaning that you just let everything happen to you and wash over you. It's not that at all. It's about letting go of the suffering so that you've got a clearer mind to be able to realize what it is that you do need to do, what your priorities are, and looking to focus on those. So I do have a little morning routine where I look to journal. I plan my food. I plan and look at my food. I plan and look at my day. I use a fantastic app called Todoist, which is like my second brain, which takes a lot of pressure off of myself.
I've got that. I haven't been able to get into it.
It's amazing. But again, you've got to, it's amazing how I use it for me. It's one of those things that again, my whole premise is that you've got to find what works for you. And it's just about being curious and exploring that. And Todoist works amazingly for me because all that mind chatter that you have about what it is that you need to do or when you've got to do it, again, it's just all gone because it just lives in my second brain. And so I can just get on with doing whatever. And then I just look at brain and say, what am I going to do next? So yeah, it makes life a lot simpler when you've got these little systems and little hacks for yourself.
It's fantastic. Okay, family and friends. How's your social network and how does that affect you? You said your relationship's better with your daughter. So how does this help you with, especially with the diet and everything?
Yeah. So again, I predict that had I not done this work, like I say, I think me and her would have had a very different relationship. I know that there's been she's obviously had to listen to me going on about this stuff now for a few years. And again, she's absorbed that, this is one of the reasons why I wanted this as well. I didn't want any of my food hang-ups or life hang-ups to be rubbing off on her. I wanted her to have the best life. And so now she has some of these tools in her toolbox as well. Likewise, I try not to obviously preach to my friends, but in the same breath, I would hope that, anytime you have a little conversation, you never know what somebody's taking away from it, isn't it? And so that helps. And again, we have the power to decide what it is that we want to do, and I want to have good relationships with my friends and with my family. And so I now have the tools that if there was something that wasn't working somewhere down the line, I now know what I can do about it. I just step back and again I look at it with curiosity of kindness for myself and for them and say, well, what can I do about it then? And so again, relationships are completely different as a result of that. So much more easier, really. Time wise, obviously I am a busy bee, so I do, but again, I know that I've got that awareness. And the action steps I take is that I make sure that I build in time, and I'm actively trying to build in time for my friends and family. And we'll continue to do so. Is it always perfect? No. But, we are a work in progress. We will never be perfect, and neither should we.
That's awesome. So one of my next questions, what habits do you recommend people establish? It sounds just setting time aside is one of the most important things.
Looking at yourself as a whole being. That's the thing. You are more than what you eat. You're more than your health. You're more than your job. You're more than whatever it is. And looking at your whole mind, body, and soul.
Now, this is where I need your help. Okay. Now, I've gone through all my questions. We've run through, mindfulness. We've run through nutrition and everything. Now, here is the primitive male brain of mine, which has subconsciously blocked out the mindful menopause. Now, this is where I need your help. You're going to have to take over because, number one, men don't really find out much about this. We don't really know much about this. All we know is we're in trouble all the time.
Oh dear. Well, I think the thing is with menopause, so perimenopause and menopause, it's actually it's only recently becoming less taboo, I think. I was talk about, like, even when I was a little girl, you didn't talk about your monthlies, you didn't talk about your cycles or anything like that, whereas now, the generations, they're that little bit further on and they're starting to talk about it. But you know, the women of a certain age, of my age and upwards, we're of a generation where you didn't really talk about it. And again, you were still coming out of a generation where you just had to get on with it. And so that awareness piece socially and culturally isn't there. It's starting to get along now, but it just wasn't there. And likewise, studies, you know, I don't think there's been enough studies done medically on all of these things. I mean, you do have andropause as well. So you do have the male menopause as well. I will confess I don't know as much about it, but again,
that's okay. I've never heard it before.
Yeah,
I'm writing it down
as well. Yeah. So you know, so again, that's probably even further behind than menopause and perimenopause, if you see what I mean. You know, so it will come along, but obviously, as you can imagine, I mean, even with or without the menopause or perimenopause, you know, as a woman, we do go through some stuff sometimes, thanks to the delights that are hormones, and that can leave us really quite shook at times, you know, because you have there's a marriage of symptoms that you can have through perimenopause and menopause, which, like I say, can leave you feeling very, very low, very, very confused. And again, physical and mental symptoms. And again, a bit like what we were talking about earlier about being kind of on that treadmill. I think it's that kind of thing. It's just like you're on this treadmill and you just want to get off, but you've got no control over the buttons. You know, your body is just doing what it's doing, and off you're going. And so there's that control part. So not only have we potentially lost our identities, lost our sense of self, our self-esteem bottomed as it is, then we get menopause on top of it as well. And like I say, physically and mentally feel like rubbish, you know, and it will all affect us differently. And I think this is where, again, the mindfulness comes into it for me, because there could be studies done out there, but they will be done on those people and their bodies in whatever scenario that study set up. So it's not going to tell you, it could mean absolutely diddly about what is actually going on for you as a person. And so this is where I think the mindfulness comes into it. It's about becoming aware of what is going on for you at more than just the top level. So, for example, if you were having, I mean, I don't mind oversharing, but, you know, you might get night sweats, or you might get, so a couple of times a month, my mood completely and utterly bottoms out, for example, and I've got no control over it. And as you might have told, I am typically quite, you know, I am quite upbeat. This is kind of me normally. But if you'd have caught me a few days ago, 2 days ago, I was literally on my knees and I had no way of controlling that. And then the thoughts come in, you know, I shouldn't feel like this. I don't want to feel like this. This is rubbish. This isn't me. I don't like it. And you get into victim mode. And it's understandable, because it is not pleasant at all. But this is why I said about, you know, I know that I get into judgment mode over it, and then that's when you add suffering onto your already existing suffering, if that makes sense. So mindfulness will allow you to take a step back from that. It can even help. So, for example, if you are somebody who is having hot flushes, for example, if you actually drop into your body, do breath work, that kind of thing, if you can do self-hypnosis, these things can actually reduce those occurrences. Likewise, your sleep can be impacted. So, you know, mindfulness can help be, you know, not only if you're clearing your thoughts out and, you know, you've got your life and your house in order effectively, you know, you're going to go to bed a little bit more rested. But again, working on things like sleep hygiene, like you said earlier about eating big meals before bed, you know, these kind of things can all impact you. So again, it's just looking at what do you do? How do you do it? When do you do it? Why are you doing it? Is that really serving you? Is there another way of doing it that you can step into action, and then just keep getting curious and figuring it all out? Whereas I think normally we'd just sit back and say it's all just happening to us, whereas actually we can take control.
Well, actually, I think that's one of the things I was thinking, because, you know, you said you got your group, so the women need to feel safe there, because they're going to be talking about these things. They're sensitive. Yeah. Now, my wife's 51. She is not menopausal, but I'm certainly, it's heading that direction. You know, so we don't talk about it enough. I think it's a big secret in society. Yeah, everyone's got that aunt with the hairy lip that gets a hot and cold, flushes, and that's all we know.
Yeah, and that creates embarrassment really as well.
Yes.
There's a lot of people who would feel embarrassed if they were out and having a flush, or because it is sort of still that kind of taboo subject, I think. And then, like I say, not perhaps talking about it enough with partners, like it's just something that we've got to suffer alone. And we don't, we can come together, we can talk about it, and just in talking about it, it's so cathartic. Like your lady in the PT sessions, just finding some space for yourself just to get it all out, that in itself is enough. But then if you add on the mindfulness tools and everything like that as well, again, it can be life-changing, because this is something that happens to us for quite a few years. It's not just you can't just stick a plaster on it and it goes away.
No, that's right. And in the interests of oversharing, I'm not sure I'm going to survive. But because it affects every single area of your life. So one thing I've noticed is she'll get the super hot feet, and if she gets the hot feet, she will wake up in the morning with a migraine.
Yeah.
So therefore, her feet are always out of the quilt, or or the doona, as you guys say, and then it all bunches up between us. And then, of course, I can't find her at night time, so I'll be pulling the doona and stuff. So when we wake in the morning, I've got 2 meters of doona on my side of the bed. She's got the barest scrap of doona, and then it's my fault for being a doona hog.
Yeah. And again, that lack of sleep in itself, because I think quite often, and again, this is something that I've done with my daughter, is that if I'm in a mood, I will tell her. I didn't do this pre my divorce, and I think maybe it might have been a bit different if I had. I think things would have been very different. And I will basically say, look, I'm just going to let you know that this is this. So if anything comes out of my mouth today, just ignore me, okay? But that took a lot for me to get to that stage of being able to say that, because I was somebody who thought, I can't admit weakness, I can't show my feelings. I'd gathered all these stories about how I had to literally, like Atlas, carry the world on my shoulders and not be not show that I wasn't capable. And again, I think as well with the whole monthlies, even it's like, oh, is it that time of month again? So then again, you don't want to talk about it. It's almost like, well, that's it's like it's wrong, or that it means that all of a sudden you've turned into the big bad wolf, and actually you've got no control over it. Whereas again, if we've got compassion for each other, you maybe didn't want the duvet all over yourself either, but again, we've each we can only take responsibility for how we show up in the relationship, and we can decide whether we show up with compassion or not compassion for ourselves and others.
So how can we talk about it more? How can we make it more open and not as embarrassing, not as such a big deal?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know that over here in the UK, we've had a celebrity doing something recently with regards to menopause. And so, I think that kind of stuff, builds awareness. There's then obviously people like myself coming on, whatever social media that I can, and trying to talk about these things. And, I'm constantly in other Facebook groups. I'm in my own Facebook group, and not being afraid to say it. And again, the more people who do start to talk, again, it will start to normalize it. Again, over here in the UK, there's been a lot more talk about it from an employment law point of view as well. Not I'm going to get into HR, but, so again, there's been changes in that sense. And again, that then hits the papers. So that's all going to help as well. But the brass tacks, it still comes down to the people in those relationships to actually talk and say what's going on before it hits the fan, ideally.
I think it would be somehow, this is probably something for me that I definitely have to look into as well, because a lot of men only see it from a negative point of view. We don't see it as a natural change a woman is going to go through. We don't see the struggles she goes through, either because we're experiencing the negative end of it, or as men, we're all talking about the negative end of it because, you can't talk about that in normal everyday life because then, you're a pig or you're a sexist or, whereas men are hurting as well because they don't have, the relationship they had just either a few months, a year, a couple of years previous, and it's not the same because it is changing.
Yeah.
And the man and the woman have not got that ability to be able to, sit and talk about it and go, well, you always used to, or we don't do this anymore. And in actual fact, things are changing. This is just normal.
Yeah.
So it's that ability to be able to communicate with each other.
Yeah. And it is, like I say, it is a change process. I mean, they call it the change as well, don't they? But it is a change process, like you say, for everybody in a number of different ways. But again, we all have to play our own part in that, because because chances are your dear wife wouldn't want to be, doing these things or saying these things. She genuinely may not have complete control over herself at that point in time. And then again, these things escalate, or again, I think it's kind of normal if you haven't got these tools in your toolbox. Again, I was talking to somebody earlier about how, when I was in the relationship, I actually think I was quite a bitch. I don't like to admit it. I'm a perfectionist, but again, you go through these things in relationships where, again, it's never your fault. It's always the other person's fault.
Yeah, of course.
And then when you get together with your mates, and that will work, boys and girls, or all of a sudden you're in this kind of situation where you're just talking about all the negatives, and that just breeds negativity. So I'm not trying to encourage toxic positivity, but just kind of getting somewhere in the middle where it's a bit neutral and realizing that there's often more to a story than meets the eye, I think, is the key.
Okay, so basically helping people become more mindful of themselves, more mindful of their emotions, their feelings, how that correlates to food.
Yeah.
All right, so what final advice would you give people?
Yeah. So I think, like I say, it is just really get to know yourselves. And it sounds perhaps a bit cliched almost, and people are probably, I know who I am kind of thing. But do you, do we really know? How well do you actually know yourself? How well do you know what makes you tick? What your strengths, your weaknesses are, what your triggers are, whether that be food, weight loss, your partner. And you've got the power to then decide if you want to step into action over that or not. And so, again, take the power if you want it.
No, that's awesome. Faye, thank you very, very much for your patience with my Neanderthal kind of thinking in this regard.
No, not at all.
But, absolutely amazing. Just, being more intuitive and just allowing yourself to have those feelings, to just understanding those feelings, that they're just feelings. And,
they are.
That we don't have to have a negative connotation with them. We can actually take them, examine them, and we can actually turn it into something fresh and positive.
Yeah.
And expand and double time for some people. That's absolutely amazing. You're an inspiration, and thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to press end broadcast, and it's going to kick us violently into the cold. Okay. All right, have an amazing day.
You too. Bye.
Everybody, you tuned in today. Thanks for listening to today's Relax and Enjoy Health podcast with Faye Casement. If you'd like to know more about Faye, you can find her on Facebook at faye.casement or Wellness4women. Also on Instagram at the same tagline, Wellness4women. I've been your host, Andrew French, for optimal health, well-being and balance. If you want the bullet points from today's podcast, or even for some free resources, check us out at www.relaxenjoyhealth.com.au. If you've enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or even leave us a review and a rating. To catch all the latest from us, you can follow us on Facebook at Relax Enjoy Health. But for now, stay sane and have a great day.